Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Game. I am in my office slash closet. I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that. I am here with Stacy. Stacy, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, hi, my name is StaciMcgowan. I grew up in New Jersey, as did our host. And now I found myself in Maryland after going to Salisbury University. Got my first teaching job right after graduation. So this is my 5th year teaching physical education, grades 3, 4, and 5.
Beautiful. All right. So with no further ado, we are going to take a look at the clips. And if you can, just walk us through what is going on in the clips. So we have right here.
Yeah. So I actually learned this activity at the Teacher of the Year Middle School Luau at Shape Nashville. It was the Shape America convention. They called it over under. I could not call it over under because the kid goes under first, so I had to change the title to under over just because that would bother me. The students were working together with a small group of 3, could have been done 4. They go, let's see if I can match it up perfectly to Addison. She goes over, she goes through. I caught that at the end, but you went under the scarves, over the scarves, around, and then through. It was awesome. The kids loved it. Here I did a scramble, so I actually told the groups to keep the partners the same. The scarf friends would hold the scarves the entire time, but the kids moving would go from their group and then find a new group to then do under, over, around, and through. That was the sequence we were working on.
So they changed groups on this activity?
In the scramble we did. The Teacher of the Year event in Nashville, they didn't do a scramble, but I kind of thought it would get the kids moving, working with different people. So they worked from their 3, and then the mover went to another group, and I actually just made the objective to see how many groups you could get to.
Nice. Now, who was the Teacher of the Year that showed this?
It was Tim Muller, Middle School Teacher of the Year. It was at the luau, the highlights of Teacher of the Year.
I like that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great.
Let's get to the questions. Next, GLO, what did you align this to?
Yes, so this was actually a warm-up. I would love to use it as an instant activity next time, like get in, get 2 scarves, find a partner, and go. But we never taught it before. So this was as a warm-up. It was definitely targeting the fitness knowledge standard 3, and then standard 4 with personal social responsibility. I just ended up changing it. I know I learned it at the middle school level, but I just changed the wording a little bit to target my 3rd graders, my 4th graders, and my 5th graders. So I actually ended up targeting the health-related fitness components for 4th grade. So flexibility, like stretching to making yourself really wide so your partners can go through, muscular endurance, holding it up high, super long. And then for 5th grade, I talked about, speed and agility, so the skill-related components. And for 3rd grade, we talked mostly about what a warm-up is because we are using this as a warm-up activity. 4th and 5th grade, we're doing the fitness gram pacer test that day.
All right, so this was their warm-up. They came in, you explained what's going on. They got done, and then you brought them together, and then you discussed the different components. Is that what was going on?
Yep, exactly. So it was really cool. It brought up really good questions. I really liked the 3rd grade talk, which was kind of fun. Talking about warm-ups, what was really important, talking just all through it, oxygen, blood, muscles, all that stuff. And then it was a good segue for 5th grade as well to kind of talk about why we did that specific warm-up for the fitness gram pacer. Kind of got them moving all over. They were doing it all. It was great.
I like that, and especially when we talk about warm-ups, we don't need to be static stretching. So I think that it's big. It's dynamic. You're moving around. Really cool stuff. We talked about it was the beginning of the class. It was the warm-up. So the next part, the equity in the activity. How would you change this, or how did you change it for any of your students if they had disabilities, if they were unable to go over, let's say they were in a wheelchair or something like that? What did you have planned already, or did you do anything?
So I didn't have to really change too much. My wording I changed for some students and just like the tempo of it completely. However, thinking about this question, you could definitely adapt The distance, so for instance, it was 3 people, 2 scarves. You could do it with long pool noodles if you wanted it longer. Either a group was going through, or I would use, for wheelchair purpose, scarves if you were concerned about you couldn't be wide enough for the chair. I wouldn't think it would be a problem going over a scarf, just the distance wouldn't work. I would use short jump ropes. It could roll over, roll under, same activity. The students that were holding the jump ropes would just need to stand obviously a little bit wider. So I would replace that with just some different equipment. I will say this question kind of makes my brain wander. For my adapted students, I have one adapted PE class. They are big on prepositions. So over and under, around, those things are like big. I can't say they're standards for them in the classroom, but I do know that those are, units they work on all year long. Open, close. So this, just because we used the words and the teacher of the year used it over, under, around, and through, doesn't mean that you have to use those prepositions. You could have done, let's forward, backward, I don't know, just around. I don't know. That would be an interesting kind of bubble moment I just had of how also you could change it to modify for some serious content.
Yeah, and that's one of the main things we have to remember is we go to these conferences and we see how that teacher used it. And then we have to go, how can my students use it?
Yeah.
We have to modify. Too many times we think it's just like plug and play. We find it, we push it right in. We don't make the modifications. We don't change anything. It doesn't fit into our unit the way it should. We just do it because it was a cool activity. So
right.
I think that making it, taking the middle school, bringing it down to elementary is brilliant. And that's the whole purpose of this Beyond the Game, because I want teachers to look at what's going on, find out the background, and then how can you modify this activity to make it better for your students? So I really like that.
Yeah. Can I share something?
Sure.
So someone actually tweeted back at me when they watched it, and they brought up an amazing, I actually don't remember who it was. Sorry if you were watching. But they asked, how did the kids know who to scramble to? They said, did the scarf people have a signal? I was like, oh my gosh, why didn't they have a signal? I need to play this again. So even that sounds so silly, but it just proves that other people see that idea and immediately go somewhere else with it, which was awesome.
Yeah, and that's what we should be doing. So I really like that. So if we go to our depth of knowledge questions, the recall and reproduction, they were able to do the scarves. The skills, They were able to move it. Do we have any strategic thinking or reasoning going on in there?
So the only real strategy that was happening was looking for kind of to go against the light bulb moment we just had. I did give them kind of probing questions about how to know if they could scramble to a different group, and we kind of came up with a couple fifth graders said, if I see a kid going through, I know through was the last word, I can go enter now. That was the only, I would consider, strategy that was occurring during that conversational piece. We did have some groups, and we gave it to them choice around. Some kids were going completely around. The other kids that they were working on speed and they wanted to get the most repetitions, they were going halfway around. And I let the class kind of authentically come up. If no kids asked, I didn't care which way they were doing it, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So some authentic stuff happening there, but it worked out. They were getting into it.
Yeah, so if I was going to extend the activity to try to hit 3 or 4, then you put the onus on them, right? So you go, okay, we're going to do under, over, and through. So you start out there. That's always my builds where I tell them the initial, first build, second build, third build, whatever.
Yeah.
Most people are now, okay, I'm going to give you 30 seconds with your group. I want you to come up with something different.
Love it.
And I always push them, something I never saw before. So you can't use under, you can't use over, you can't use.
Yes.
I want to come up with something new, something innovative. And I think that really hits those DOK 3 and 4s of
yes.
And then, one of your final questions could be, how could you, what did we do in this activity that you can use outside of my class? That's one of the ways.
Love it.
So for the assessment part, we talked about, you came back, you talked about, you know, the different components of fitness, you talked about the other stuff. Were you assessing that in the lesson? Because I know you talked about you were doing the fitness gram. So
right.
What was your assessment focused on for that class period?
No, that definitely, my overarching goal was to get to that fitness gram assessment, but I was definitely informally assessing the warm-up itself, making sure that kids were being serious enough, having fun, but being serious enough that they were trying to use what we were talking about that class. So in 4th grade, when we were talking about, you know, cardiorespiratory and running to different groups, I also wanted them to really, when they went through, that they were stretching, thinking about flexibility. So if I saw some groups that were just doing it half, kind of rushing through, I would refocus those certain groups and make sure they knew what the objective was, which was to increase their heart rate, get them warmed up, ready for physical activity, but that they were actually thinking about identifying the health components that were associated or demonstrating the understanding of working together with their peers to make them successful.
Yeah, I had one supervisor who told me you can only really assess one thing per lesson. So yeah, we're going to give that 4-minute feedback, right? I'm going to go around, we're going to talk about this, have them think about how else they could do it, or is that the most effective movement, efficient movement, all that stuff. But when it comes to assessment, if we're truly looking at something and keeping the data, then we can't assess really more than one thing because we don't have that much time. We don't have that much focus. So if your assessment's focused on the fitness gram part and you're keeping track of all that data, it's really hard to do something else, which I think is something we need to focus on. That in our lesson, you pick one main thing to assess.
Cool.
And
Love
if
it.
I'm wrong here, which I very well may be, this might be a talking point that somebody watching this can come back and say, well, you're wrong because of this, or, you know, there are ways to assess this, but if that's not your main focus, then we don't need to spend that much time on it. And I think sometimes we get lost thinking we have to assess multiple things. Then we just do everything shoddily. So I don't have any more questions. This is your time. Any last thoughts? And also, how can we get in touch with you outside this video?
Yeah, awesome. I cannot thank you enough for contacting me about it. I was super pumped. I had just created Twitter from Nashville. So this was like so exciting. I love phys ed. I love people. I love socializing. So this hit like all of the main focus points. You can reach me obviously through this Twitter, or my email is SMcGowan, just the way it's spelled on the Twitter handle, at wcboe.org.
Nice. And just tell everyone your Twitter handle as well. We'll put it in there in the notes and everything, but just tell them your Twitter handle on the video as well.
Yep. It's at Stacy with an I, McGowan at 18.
All right.
Thank you so much, Justin.
Good episode. We appreciate you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you again for having me. So much fun.